with
maiden
you. Thanks for being
voyage.
here. The maiden voyage. That's right. Let's go. So I met you about not quite a year ago and heard just a little bit of your story, and we had a bunch of overlap in kind of the stuff that we're interested in and the stuff that we're trying to pursue with the work that we're doing. So maybe you could just start by telling us a little bit about kind of where you came from in the church world and then where you've landed and maybe why you've made that transition.
Sure. Grew up in the church, was a pastor for 21 years before I started my company Plumline, which is a spiritual wellness company. And, you know, it was a very, very beneficial aspect of my life. I mean, I have to attribute so much good to my experiences within the church. And then started hitting some of my own glass ceilings at a certain point. It was around 2015. And perhaps you're referring to when we met the story of when I was putting my daughter to bed when she was 4 years old. And here I am teaching, telling everybody how to live their life and supposed to know how to be fulfilled and take advantage of this thing that Jesus calls life abundantly. And I'm putting my little girl to bed, and she tells me if she could choose a nice dad or me, she'd still choose me, you know?
Ouch.
Yeah. And I explored that with her a little bit. I said, "Oh, honey, is daddy not very nice?" And she just confirmed, "Not really, but I'd still choose you." And there's nothing in a little 4-year-old girl's, you know, makeup that's passive aggressive or something like that. Like, I genuinely think she was trying to tell me, express her unconditional love, you know, and just did it in a way that had this truth bomb packed into it. And the gift to me of that was, if anybody else in my life at that time had communicated something similar of kind of what it was like to be with me, you know, it would not have been met with any sort of receptivity. It would have been defensiveness, or it would have been kind of dismissing them.
Right.
Like, this is a you issue.
Right.
You know,
You'd be thinking it's running through their own insecurities.
That's right.
Their, you know,
I'm sorry you feel that way,
Right.
or something. But I could not dismiss the sentiments of my own daughter. And that was this turning point where I had to look long and hard in the mirror and be willing to go on these voyages deep underneath the surface of my own skin and ask really hard questions. Like, what is it about me that at times can have a certain level of intensity or a way of relating or a way of leading that is off-putting or intimidating or objectifies people and their gifts to accomplish the goal, but doesn't really honor the person, you know, these types of things. And some of the most difficult things to confess had to do with more of these existential realities inside of me. I would look at something like the list of the fruit of the Holy Spirit in Galatians 5, for example, which are supposed to be the proof of the evidence of the Holy Spirit working in our life to heal us and to grow us and these types of things. And I just go down that list of love and joy and peace and patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And I'm telling you, Ian, not a single one of them did I experience inside of me in any kind of consistent or lasting way. Maybe circumstantially, you know, like if things are going well, or if it's a certain person that I really resonate with or have good chemistry with, sure, maybe some patience or maybe some, you know, joy or something, but not in any kind of a lasting substantive way. And that's a hard truth to face. It's like, what does that mean? Like, do I not have the Spirit? Do I have him, but I'm not able to open myself to his love or his transformational power in a way that's actually effective, that's actually changing me, you know? And so those are hard things to face.
Yeah, so much of our focus in the Western world on morality and even in the church is on behavior and not on character. It's like, don't do X, Y, and Z. do these things, don't do these things, rather than thinking of the character, like the fruit of the Spirit that is part of the spiritual reality and the spiritual fabric that is your makeup. And that stuff is deep. That stuff is a lot deeper than behavioral.
That's right. And that's been one of the most critical things in our Plumline work as I work with really successful people who have their behavior dialed. They're disciplined. They're good men and women.
Sure.
They care deeply for their marriage. They care deeply for their parenting. They're very successful and accomplished in their professional life. Spiritually, they love God. They're highly engaged in their church. So behaviorally, maybe they're even better than I was.
Sure.
Like they didn't have a daughter that's saying to them, if I could choose an I dad or you, I still choose you. They're going, oh, my dad's great. I love him. He's so kind to me, whatever it is. So I constantly am working with people and interacting with people who do have their behavior dialed in. They do have some level of success externally or outwardly. But when I talk to them behind the closed door of my office, or I talk to them within the context of this processing group, their confession is, I too remain unsettled on the inside.
Yeah.
The outside looks like it should. It's admirable to people, but on the inside, I remain unsettled.
Why are these guys focusing on the external and not the internal? Is that something that our culture has placed a lower value on? Is that just kind of a normal human thing?
Yeah.
Like, where does that come from?
Yeah. Well, everything I do is based on the Shema, which is, Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment in the law? Matthew 22, Mark 12, and Luke 10. And in all three cases, he affirmed this ancient Jewish framework called the Shema, which is a Hebrew word. It just means to hear. And it starts with, the reason for that is it starts with, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength.
Right.
And your neighbor is yourself. There's nothing more important than this. Or even more profoundly, in Matthew 22, he says, all the law and all the commandments hang on that.
Right.
This is the center if we're a Christ follower. Like, go and make disciples, teaching them to obey everything I commanded you. Well, what's everything you commanded us? It's summarized from the lips of Christ in the Shema. Love God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. This is what it's all about, right? This is the ultimate goal. Well, I started to develop from that years ago what I now call our spiritual anatomy. The idea is simple. Just like our physical body has systems.
Right.
I got a circulatory system. I got a respiratory system, so on. And physical health and a holistic approach to health has something to do with these systems functioning really well, being well nourished and attached and all that kind of stuff. The spiritual anatomy works like that too. It's made up of these four systems: heart, soul, mind, and strength. And what good spiritual work and development looks like, and what it leads to, spiritual maturity and wholeness, has something to do with these four systems of heart, soul, mind, and strength being attached. Because in worst case scenarios, they can be detached.
Right.
But then secondly, nourished, because they can be connected, but not in a healthy spot.
Right.
And then third, integrated, which means I know how to allow them to show up and do what they do in my life and in my relationships that matter to me most, and in my leadership and those types of things.
Right.
To answer your question, I think the issue is that the culture that we live in, the cultural West, definitely values certain systems in our spiritual makeup more than they value others. And as in anything, that cultural context bleeds its way into the church. And perhaps there are aspects of the church that tend to value certain spiritual formation relating to those certain systems that are valued more than others. And it ends up getting the lion's share of the resource, of the effort, and of the attention.
My wife and I are going through Mere Christianity right now. She's never read it.
Beautiful.
I've read it like a dozen times.
Yeah. One of my favorites.
I love,
Everyone should read Mere Christianity.
Everyone should read. And I think if you love Mere Christianity and you want to go a little bit deeper, Orthodoxy for me is like my gold. I've read that probably 8 times in the past year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Orthodoxy is amazing. And actually, if you read Orthodoxy and then you read Mere Christianity, you're like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
What you're connecting the dots for like you just did the exact same framework, but made it more simple to understand.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, Lewis has this amazing gift for metaphor. And when he gets to the part about morality in our culture, he uses a metaphor of ships. Do you remember this? Like ships in a fleet.
Go ahead.
His premise is there's 3 aspects to morality. The first one is not bumping into each other. Like if you're in a fleet of ships and you're going across the ocean, not bumping into each other is pretty important. And he says our culture focuses on that, and we don't really focus on the other 2, which are that the ship itself is well kept and well maintained.
Mm-hmm.
So the individual like interior life of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third thing is the direction that the ship is supposed to be going.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he makes the argument that if you only focus on not bumping into each other and you miss the other 2, you're not having, first of all, you don't have that fulfillment of like a intentional direction set for your life and a purpose, but also you are going to bump into each other if you're not a well-maintained ship. Right.
That's right.
And if your ship isn't actually your own, and it's something that you're stewarding, then you have a moral obligation to make sure that you're taking care of it really well. So it sounds like that's some of the deep work that you're doing with these guys, and probably connecting them as well to that overall direction of where they're supposed to be, like what their life aim could be.
Yes, I love the metaphor. I think it plays. Truth backs up truth. Within that spiritual anatomy framework, the mind and the strength would be those kind of more externally.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
aspects.
I want go through the four. Do you call them forces or
systems? Yeah, the 4 systems in the spiritual anatomy.
Cool.
Yeah, you mean just definitively like define them and
yeah.
So the strength is our doing, our creating, and our contributing.
Okay,
right. It's the way that I embody the beliefs and the philosophies that I have. It has something to do with my developed and practiced and natural gifts and abilities and talents and skill sets. When I bring them to bear, like I may monetize them and use those gifts and abilities to earn. I may use them to contribute to a church that I'm a part of or within the company, within the organization. It has something to do with the value that I bring. And then there are these character aspects to the strength, my drive, my work ethic, my ability to tough things out and put my hands on stuff, bring my energy to things, go to work, right? Well, the reason this part of us matters so much is it's because it's where our independence and our mastery and our dignity come from. Right? It's like if I don't learn to hone these natural gifts and abilities and find a work ethic and learn to roll up my sleeves and give my energy in a direction or to an organization, I'm going to be dependent on others to take care of me.
Right.
I'm going to be on a curb with my hand out going, I can't take care of myself. I need you to be responsible for my well-being.
Let alone not taking care of people in your sphere of responsibility.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I've got no ability to care for myself, let alone care for those for whom I'm responsible.
Right.
Right. And so the strength part of us, my ability to get out of bed in the morning and go to work and apply these skills and abilities, both to provide for myself, that independence part, but also to advance good.
Yeah.
Like to create change, to build things, to take hills, to accomplish the goal, those types of things, to contribute to society.
Yeah. This is a huge lack of focus in the Western church, in my opinion. I grew up in a kind of fundamentalist, Calvinistic little community, and they downplay the role of humanity in the story of God and man so much that it feels like what you just described is almost sinful. Strength is a sin. It's like rely on God, be weak so that he can be strong. You're like, well, that's not really what it's saying. Like read the passage about the Hall of Fame of faith.
Yeah.
It's all about action. Right. And I think that we've really, at least in communities that I've been a part of, really downplayed the importance of shouldering responsibility and like getting after it. And in my opinion, the commission that Christ gives us is an invitation into an adventure and to get after it. And we have to be able to use that strength.
Yeah, that's
exactly
right.
That's not a sin. It's like God made you with that strength for a reason, right?
Can I get a little heady?
Yeah,
a little
please.
Intellectual?
Please. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. If you're not a heady person, just fast forward.
If you're not a heady person, you're probably not on my channel.
Okay. All right. All right. So fine. Yeah. So piggybacking on what you're saying, there's a Swiss psychologist named Carl Jung, Jung, and he developed the Jungian archetypes: the lover, the warrior, the king or queen, and the magician or sage, and they perfectly line up with the systems in the spiritual anatomy. The heart, the soul, the mind, and the strength. Well, when the critical part of the makeup, okay, when the system in the spiritual anatomy is not healthy, or it's immature, or it is detached in some way, it slips into what Jung calls the bipolar shadow state.
Right.
So that part of us begins to manifest or express in such a way that it either expresses actively on this bipolar shadow pole or passively.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do a lot of this shadow work in the program. So if people watch the content, they'll be familiar with what you're talking about. For
fantastic.
Sure. Yeah.
So they may know, you may know already. Then the actively immature strength is the sadist strength.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a person who's like, oh, you want me to take that hill? You want me to meet the goal? You want me to finish the project? Well, I can do it. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to see and acknowledge the gifts and abilities of the team or those around me. I'm going to use them for my purpose, for my benefit. I'm not going to properly reward or acknowledge them for their contribution. I'm going to discard them when I'm done with them. So a sadist strength person, a person with immature strength, they may be very strong, but when they finish the objective, they've got a trail of broken and bleeding people behind them because they objectify and prostitute people for their gifts, using them for their own cause or their own purpose. But then on the other side of that bipolar shadow state is this passive expression of immature strength, and it's called the masochist. And if I'm operating in a masochistic strength, I'm going to roll over and I'm going to let myself be used.
Right.
You see my gifts and abilities. You see the value that I bring. You want to build your thing on my back. Well, I'm going to let you. I'm not going to demand that you pay me what I'm worth. I'm not going to use my voice if I go unacknowledged. I let you build your thing on my back. I let you discard me.
And you're actively sabotaging yourself as well and giving your strength away in a way that isn't beneficial to those that you're giving it to.
Some of the hardest work that I've done personally is like everyone, I've got people in my life who have hurt me, former bosses or coaches or teachers or even family members. And in doing that work of trying to forgive, it's like just months and months and months of like, how do I forgive this person who hurt me? How do I separate their behavior from them as the imago Dei? And how do I find freedom in this forgiveness and moving on? Well, I did all that work for people in my life who have hurt me. And we arrived at a point where this person who was guiding me, this goes, well, there is one other person who's harmed me.
Yeah.
We need to work on self-forgiveness. And I that idea of forgiving myself has always been so frustrating.
Tinges your pride a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. Like, you can't forgive yourself. It was my whole position. It's like God has to forgive you, or a person outside. Like this idea, I don't even believe in this idea of self-forgiveness. And this person guided me, goes, well, how old were you when these wounds happened? Were you a little boy? And it's like, oh no, I was, in my 20s and in my 30s and in my point, like, so you had agency then,
right?
Like you let it happen, Jake.
Right.
You allowed yourself to be used. You allowed yourself to be harmed. You allowed yourself to remain in these positions that were unjust or whatever it is.
Right.
And at some level, I had to go through a process where I looked back at those younger versions of me. This is just parts work, right? I had to look back at these younger versions of me, the 22-year-old me, the 35-year-old me, and I had to forgive them for their role in the process of being harmed. You know, like I accept you. I love you. It's okay that you didn't step up, that you didn't find your voice, that you didn't confront what needed to be confronted, that you didn't leave when you should have left.
Right.
You stayed looking for the validation. You stayed requiring other people, you know, to outside of you to tell you that you had value and worth, whatever it is. Well, mature strength is like, I know what my gifts are. I know the value that I bring.
Right.
I'm willing to bring it and employ it in the name of the mission or the vision or the cause. Now, I'm not going to let you use me.
Right.
And I'm going to require you to pay me what I'm worth. But as long as we're aligned and I'm being honored, I'm happy to sync up with this.
Right.
Right. But I was in an immature place.
This is a place that I don't hear people talking about. And maybe they are, and I just haven't found them yet. But I hear people say one of two things: either like, don't let people use you, or people in kind of the fundamentalist churches that I grew up in, why not be wronged? Why not be defrauded? Just give, like pour out like a drink offering, just give. And it's either or usually. And I don't hear people talking about what does it look like to have a healthy, integrated
That's right.
paradox that holds those two together, because there is something really valid about us as redemptive agents in the world, that we're not playing the same game the world is playing. So if someone wants to do something that, you know, if they want to cut you off and you just go like, okay, that's fine. Like you want that asphalt, that like 12 feet of asphalt, you got it, you know?
That's right.
You want to charge me a little bit extra, like whatever, that's fine. And I would love to know, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how do you navigate that balance? Because we can't just be only looking out for ourselves and being like, I'm going to get mine.
Yes.
But we also don't want to get to a place where there's bitterness and resentment and we're actually injuring and have to, like, you know, 20 years down the road go, oh, I let myself get taken advantage of in a way that I wasn't okay with.
Yes. So, you know, it's interesting that a lot of times, like what you describe, by the way, like in your church experience, is people sliding back and forth philosophically on that bipolar shadow continuum of strength, right? It's like, no, you roll over. Like the godly thing is, you know, you allow yourself to be taken advantage of. That's what Jesus would do or something. Or over here, like, no, you never allow, you bow up, like both options are actually immature.
Right.
Both options are actually represent a detached or a malnourished strength system. Healthy strength, to answer your question, isn't somehow the balance between the passive and the active strength, the sadist and the masochist. It's not somehow an interplay in between the two. Healthy strength is actually transcendent above the continuum, and it creates a triangle. Right? If the bipolar shadow state is down here as the base of the triangle, and you've got the masochist strength on one side and the sadist strength on the other, the point or the pinnacle of the triangle is a healthy strength system. And that transcendence, the way that healthy strength actually grows and rises off of the continuum, is not when I deny my potential to be the sadist or to be the masochist. It's not when I ignore the pull or the temptation of either one of these in me. It's when I name it and I acknowledge it. It's like, oh, I can be the sadist. I can use people. I can require them to serve my purpose, not properly acknowledge them and discard them when I'm done with them. And I have. And you know what else? I've got sadist potential in me, or masochist in me too. I can roll over. I can allow myself to be used. I can, in the name of whatever it is, belonging or seeking validation or wanting acceptance or wanting to be admired, I can allow heavy weights and burdens to be placed on me, to not be properly rewarded and acknowledged. I can do both of these things. Right. And the way that healthy strength, and I operate from a place of healthy strength, transcends is when I'm aware that I can do both and have, when I'm aware that that pull is in me, and I am willing to explore and name, like, well, in this specific situation, call it a church context or a work context or whatever it is, in this specific
a marriage,
whatever it is, in this specific situation, ask myself, what would it look like if I address this or I engage in this as the sadist?
Right.
Here's what I do. Here's what I'd say. Here's the energy I would have. Here's the outcome that I would drive for. I'm not okay with any other outcome. Okay, I'm clear about if I do this as a sadist, here's what that would be. All right, well, what would it look like if I did it as a masochist? All right,
Yeah.
well, here's what I would do. Here's the energy I would have. Here's what I'd say or not say. I'd bite my tongue. I'd roll over. I'd label it as I'm just being a servant or something. Like, okay, where does that lead? Okay, I'm really clear on both of these things.
Yeah.
Now, as my true self, I can reflect on and say, well, what would it look like to have healthy, mature strength?
Right.
I have my voice. I'm not willing to roll over on certain things. I'm not going to make my demands and dominate
Right.
people either. It's only this outcome that will do, and I'll force doors open. I'll force you to see things the way I want you. You know, I'm not going to do either of these. Here's what healthy strength would look like.
Yeah.
And now I'm empowered.
And this is
to engage.
this is exactly the framework that we use as well. And we talked about this in my last sit down with my buddy Josh. We talked about this, the paradox being the full embodiment of the redeemed orientation of both of those parts,
Yes.
right? And Chesterton talks about this in Orthodoxy. He says the key to Christian ethics everywhere is finding that paradox in two seemingly opposing forces and holding them both together in their full redeemed state.
That's right.
Right. So when you're talking about the strength or the warrior archetype, the integration of those two forces is actually what the healthy part is. So you don't want to be the unhealthy version that's only strength and like only I'm going to do this no matter what the cost.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be fully, abandoned and like I'm going to put other people first. I'm going to like not be a part of this equation at all. I'm going to sabotage my own strength and give it over. And actually the integration of those two things in a redeemed orientation is that triangle, right? Yeah. Where it's like, I have that power, I have that strength, but I also know I see the people around me and I know how to account for their feelings and their needs. I can account for the greater vision of like this mission that we're all a part of or this picture, this team that we're all on. And I can integrate those two. So it's kind of like the disintegration of those two is what leads to the negative on both on either side. Yeah. And so I think that key that just to reiterate what you said, the key isn't I'm not fully this and I'm not fully that. So I'm going to be right in the middle. I'm kind of like both things halfway. Yeah. It's like actually both of those negative forces have a redeemed orientation and they have to intersect. And that's the redeemed orientation is where they intersect.
That's right. And the only other thing I want to say about this, just because it was something that I missed for a long time, I wanted to make kind of that sadist voice and that masochist voice inside of me that want to take over and do it their way. And this is the only way to not be discarded or to be accepted or to have value. Like they truly believe that, right? That's why they want to roll over. They want to dominate. For the longest time, I wanted to make them the enemy. Like, you guys are jerks. I hate you. Like, screw you guys.
You're ruining my life.
You're ruining my life. Like, I wanted to get rid of them. All modern psychology is basically standing on the shoulders of two guys.
Carl Jung and Freud.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. And they agreed on a lot of things. They all agreed that we have these inner voices. We have these inner parts, right? What they disagreed on is, what do you do with them? And so it's very Freudian to say you move past them, you leave them behind, you try to cast them off or cast them out. But Jung said, no, you don't exercise those demons, you integrate them.
Yeah.
You befriend them at some level. And I found that to be very helpful. I'm not like, ticked off at the masochist in me and ticked off at the sadist in me and rejecting them and it's more I'm doing for them what Jesus does for us.
Right.
Right. Hey guys, I love you. I accept you. You have a seat at my table. You have a room in my house. And I care about you. So, hey sadist, hey buddy. What's going on in you that you want to power up and demand your way and ensure we're not taken advantage of? And what's that about for you, pal?
Yeah.
And somewhere in that little sadist part of me's mind is like, this is the only way to be safe. This is the only way to not be taken advantage of. This is the only way to ensure that we don't get hurt. You got to like be strong and pull up and pat,
Yeah.
And the true self, when I'm willing to befriend that sadist in me, is able to then say, it's like, I got us, man.
Yeah.
I can make sure that we don't get hurt without doing harm to us or harm to others.
Yeah.
And listen, Sadis, I'll take care of you.
Yeah.
I'll take care of you in this conversation with my wife.
Yeah.
I'll take care of you in this meeting with, the board, And the same for the masochist. Hey, buddy, what's making you want to bite your tongue, roll over, just go along to get along? Like, what's that about for you? And it's like, he's got all this stuff going on in him too. And I can reassure him as well. It's like, we have value to add. We have, there's important change for us to make.
Right.
And it's going to require us not to roll over. I've got to find my voice. I've got to lead strong. I've got to assert. But I'll take care of you. Like I'll make sure that, that we don't get harmed. And even if we do get discarded or whatever it is, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's okay for us to want to be accepted and loved by them, but
good.
We don't need it. And I got us.
The way that I think about it is like, I want to have both of those guys giving their like proper orientation and help me. So for me, it's not just like, I got us. For me, it's like, hey, Sadis, I need that strength.
Yes.
I need that indomitable, like unbeatable spirit.
Yes.
I need that. So like,
that's right.
Let's get that back online in the right direction.
Yeah.
And let's get this guy over here as well.
Yeah.
You guys work together
I need that humility. I need that ability to it's
see
not just
others.
about me, to see other, like, so there are aspects of them.
Right.
That it's like, I care about these.
So I almost think of myself as, in those situations, like I'm the guy that tries to figure out how to bring those two forces together.
Yeah.
And it's when those two forces come together that I'm at my best. And and that's now we've spent all this time on strength, and each one of those quadrants,
they all have that
same thing. So
that's
do
right.
you want to just really quick run through? We don't need to go that deep
into
a
victory lap through that.
Yeah.
So mind is your ability to think, to learn, and to make judgments. Okay. So Adam Grant, he's organizational psychologist, professor at Stanford University. He says intelligence is your ability to think and learn. Wisdom is the quality of your judgments.
That's so good.
So here's this healthy mind that's got the ability to think critically, to have a growth mindset. We're always growing. We're always learning. We can learn from everybody. And to take all of that thinking and learning and to use it to make quality judgments about people, about decisions we have to make, about this thing that we're building, about this change that needs to happen, right? Well, the reason the mind part of us matters so much is because it's where all the structure and stability of life is going to come from. I can't ask the strength question from Francis Schaeffer, how shall we then live, until I have the philosophies and the theologies that have been established from my thinking, learning, and the quality judgments of how I'm going to structure and live my life. Right.
You can't have strength just running wild without a direction and without order and principles. That's why like the king is always the one that creates the kingdom, and then the warrior fights for the kingdom.
That's exactly right. You got to go build it and establish it, warrior. So, and part of that structuring too with the mind is, how do we evaluate? Like, is the philosophy, is the theology, is the plan, is the strategy working? Is it creating the change that we desire? Is it accomplishing the goal that we believe is valid? And so there's these KPIs that we develop, and there are these spreadsheets that come alongside and say, yes, we're taking the ground that we need to take. We're on the course that we need to be on, those types of things.
And this is so good. I think in we're really good in the Western world. Men are typically pretty good at using their minds for their work, but they're not usually bringing that same orientation to their homes.
Yes.
Where they're trying to strategize and learn and understand and make good judgments about, how do I structure this in a way that brings flourishing for the people that are in my domain.
That's right.
And that's a good switch that I like to talk with guys about, is like, what if you treated your home in the same way that you treated you came with the same energy and commitment and intentionality about setting goals and having meetings and checking in on progress and learning about the people that are living with you and making good judgments that'll help you guys move towards a goal that you're aiming at.
Yeah, it's possible that in what you're describing, the mind too has slipped into that bipolar shadow state.
Sure.
And it's expressing more maybe in the home on the passive side.
Right.
So that bipolar shadow state for the mind, the actively immature mind is a tyrant.
Mm-hmm.
So that looks like it's my way or the highway.
Right.
I'm the smartest guy in the room. No, I'm not interested in your feedback or your opinion.
Yeah.
When I say jump, you say how high.
Yeah.
There's the tyrannical mind.
Easily threatened.
Yes. Greatly insecure.
Right.
Hiding behind all this power and this
Right.
strength, But on the passive side, the passive mind is an abdicator.
Right.
And that is, I'm not willing to take responsibility for what's mine.
This is the whole happy wife, happy life thing that kind of drives me crazy. It's like there's a nugget of truth there. This is why all great lies have a nugget of truth at the center.
Yeah.
It's like, of course you want your wife
Yeah.
to be happy. Of course you want to, serve her and love her and take care of her sacrificially. But if that's your metric of success in your family, you're just abdicating.
Yeah.
I'm
very prone to abdicate personally. It's a struggle that I have. And even in practical ways, like my wife has a degree in business management from college, and she's just very naturally gifted in that way. She's good at it. I am not.
Okay.
I'm more kind of visionary, dreaming, that kind of idea guy. And so in our home, she takes the lead on our budgeting and on the finances. And, you could ask me how much money is in our account right now, and I'd say, let me go ask my wife, and those types of things. So in many ways, I have abdicated a responsibility to bring alongside of her as a partner my leadership, my insight, my opinions, my thoughts, my problem solving, my strategizing on the finances of our home. And I've, in many ways, abdicated that responsibility. And so many people misuse the word delegation. I've delegated that to her, right? But in so many instances, it's not truly delegation because I'm not involved. I just pushed it off of my plate onto yours. I'm not supporting you. I'm not developing you to play that role. I'm not helping you troubleshoot when things arise. And if things go wrong, I just point outside of me. I go, well, I gave that to you. Or is these circumstances beyond my control? It's a complete abdication of responsibility.
That's such a good distinction to make because it is really important to be able to work together as a team and to play to your strengths. And that's a sign of a healthy marriage.
For sure.
But that has to be done well. That's a balance that needs to be held really well. Do you have any tips on how to tell when you are in a healthy way delegating to a teammate and then when you've abdicated?
Yeah, you're still involved. So they're doing the operational work, the tactical tasks that come along with, the project that you've delegated to them, but you're still involved. You're checking in, you're saying, how is it going? Do you have the resources that you need to, finish this project well? What problems or challenges are you facing, and how can I be involved in helping you figure that out, or find the person that can help you figure that out, and those types of things. So true delegation comes with a lot of support and interest, and offering the opportunity to troubleshoot or to be a sounding board or those types of things. It's not just you go do it and I don't think about it again.
Okay, so that's mind, and then you've got two more.
Yeah. So the soul is the most mysterious one of all, and maybe the most difficult to comprehend. But the soul represents our being, and flowing from our being, our dreaming and our envisioning.
Yeah. Becoming.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the reason that part of us matters so much is because it's where our core identity, or what I would call our true self, and then flowing from that, our life's meaning and purpose comes from. So if I'm detached or have an immature soul, I don't have any idea who I am, and I don't have any clue what my life's about. And this is one that I am constantly faced with here. We live in this really impressive area, greater Nashville. People are moving here from all over the country, and they're highly accomplished and they're highly intelligent and all of these things. I sit down with guys all the time who are just so admired, by people because of their achievements and because of their brilliance and their giftedness. And I sit them down one-on-one and I ask them, so if I take away all your money that you've made, and I took away all the things you've been able to purchase and acquire because of this money. You know, I take away your McLaren and your 4 houses and all that kind of stuff.
Who are you then?
Who's sitting in front of me right now?
Right.
And they all say the same thing immediately. They go, "Oh, that's not who I am. I'm a husband and I'm a father and I'm a Christ follower," right? And all these things. I say, okay, I take away your wife. I take away your kids.
We're getting biblical Job over here.
Yeah, that's right. You're a single dude sitting in front of me right now. So now you don't have any money and you don't have any assets and you don't have a family. Who's sitting in front of me right now? And then they typically will all say the same thing. They'll talk about their gifts and abilities that they've developed and grown. Well, I'm a strategist. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a problem solver. Or they'll talk about some of their character traits or their personality. I'm generous. I care about people.
Right.
Okay. I take away your gifts and I take away your talents and your abilities. And you just keep pulling the thread. Who's sitting in front of me right now, getting deeper and deeper to that core self? And we always reach a point where they have no idea who they are. It's like that scene from, have you ever seen that movie Anger Management with Adam Sandler and Jack Nicholson? And there's that scene where they're in the support group, the anger support group, and he's like, "Hey, tell us about who you are." You know, and they go through these different layers, right? Like, no, not what you do for a living. Tell us who you are. You're describing your personality.
Right.
Not that. Tell us who you are. You're talking about your hobbies and your interests. He reaches a boiling point where he's like, "I don't know what you want me to say."
Right.
You know, I think we're all like that. That scene is funny.
Yeah.
Because we all go, if I was sitting in that
it.
seat, I don't know what I'd say.
Right.
I don't know who I am. So the soul is critical for that.
It gets to the crux of what Plumbline is, but how do you get to the core?
Yeah, you got to pay me and come sit in a cohort.
Perfect.
You do. You have to dig through all the layers, right?
Yeah.
There are all these layers that have been piled on top of our core essence over the course of our lifetime, right? And for good reason. There's a good reason that we've been buried like that. There's an attempt to keep ourselves safe and to experience meaning in the world.
Right.
And so these layers that we operate from, or maybe people call them masks, you know, it's like I perform or I become a workaholic.
Yeah.
Or
and some of them are healthy and some of them are not healthy. Like
that's right.
Some of them are helpful and some of them are not helpful.
One of the primary layers that's been piled on top is this thing called a personality.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I think that's why people geek out on all the tests,
right.
You know, whether it's Strengths Finders or the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator or the Enneagram has a massive cult following now. Right. And people love these things because they take them and they feel like, well, this is helping me know and understand who I am. Right. And I tell people all the time, Enneagram's so popular. You know, I'm a type this with a wing this and a subtype that. And I tell them all the time, the Enneagram is very helpful. I love it. I've been studying it for 15 years. But don't misuse the Enneagram. The Enneagram cannot tell you who you are.
Right.
It only tells you who you had to become. Like all a personality is, regardless of which one you use, a personality are our learned patterns of thinking and behaving to feel safe or experience meaning in the world. And they are learned patterns. That's why the assessments work.
Right.
How do you tend to respond in this type of situation? How do you tend to think about life in this regard? What do you tend to do in these scenarios, right? And because we are predictable, because we have these patterns of thinking and behaving, because I'm predictable, it spits out a type.
Right.
With a wing, or it spits out these 4 letters, that describes not who I am at my core, but my way of being, my strategy of being I've taken on to exist in the world. That's one of the layers that we have to dig through in an attempt to return to who God made you to be.
Isn't a bad thing.
No, it's just the house where we live. This home that you're living in is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It provides you with shelter. It's where you rest. It's where you keep your food and, those types of things. You have all these great memories and shared experiences. But your personality, while it's the place where you operate from, it's the place where you reside, right, and exist within the world, what we have to understand is you're no more your personality any more than you're the house that you live in. The house can reflect you. I picked these colors.
Yeah.
I selected this landscaping. I took out this wall to open up the floor plan because that's what I wanted. These types of things, right? Your house can reflect things about who you are, but it's not who you are.
Yeah.
You took the raw materials of your life. Some of those raw materials are genetics. Some of those raw materials are the circumstances that you were born into, right? Some of those raw materials are the conditions that you're facing within your family of origin or these types of things. And you took all these raw materials and you constructed a house, okay? This place to operate from. Very important that we do that. All I want people to understand is you can leave.
Right. Or you can change the floor plans.
You can remodel the kitchen.
Yeah.
You can put in a pool.
Yep.
You can change the landscape. You can paint the walls a different color,
Which
right?
is not a popular take today.
That's right.
We're so obsessed with identity being a fixed reality, right? Like my identity is my reality, but it's not just my identity over time. It's like whatever I say it is right now is reality, and you have to agree with that as well. And it's such a confining, trapping way to think.
Yes.
It's a limiting belief.
The best use of things like the Enneagram aren't like just become the healthiest version of your type or something. The best uses of Enneagram is how do I transcend my type?
Right.
And welcome other types. Practice different ways of being in the world.
I've seen the Enneagram. I got turned on to it maybe 10 years ago, and just like everybody around me, I got really into it. I loved the insights that it gave me, specifically about understanding how to have empathy and compassion for people that annoyed me. I see what their motivation is, right? So that's what I love about the Enneagram is it highlights the core motivations and core fears. And so if you can understand what people are being driven by and what they're avoiding, you have a lot more compassion for their behavior.
Yes.
So that was really a huge open window for me to look through. But I've seen the Enneagram do so much damage because it's given people permission to be a specific way and get set into that way, into that pattern. And then
hide behind it. Well, you just got to understand I'm a type this.
Right.
So you just got to roll over and let me do what I do.
And I'm sure people that are listening, if you're into the Enneagram, you're probably thinking, oh yeah, that's such a type 4 thing to do or such a type 1 thing to do or whatever. It's
that's
like everybody
we
has
weaponize
that.
it.
Yeah.
We use it to judge each other and to pigeonhole one another.
Yeah.
And like, I know all about you because I know that you're a type whatever.
So soul is mysterious, and it's about being and becoming. And it's not just for you, it's also for the people around you and for the world around you.
That's right.
And you have to be able to enter into that soul world with open hands.
Yeah. If you want to practice some good soul work or try to integrate that soul, practice a different way of being in the world.
Yeah.
So for example, if in groups you typically speak up, like I gotta make my presence known. I gotta add to the conversation. I've got to give my insights. I've got to argue and push on that guy. Try staying silent.
Yeah.
Or flip it.
If
you're the kind of person that typically goes to groups and you kind of stay silent, you take up very little space, you stay small, you can leave and people forgot you were even there. Try speaking up.
Yeah.
Try asserting some of your ideas. Try pushing on some concepts that are raised in the group. If you're the kind of person that typically goes out, I have to find people, I have to be social, I have to go to the thing, I have to plan the thing, I have to organize. Try staying home.
Right.
And sitting in the silence and reading a book.
Yeah.
Or if you're the kind of person that Paul's going, I'm more introverted. I want to stay home. I want to stay safe in my space. I want to read the book. Try going out, try pursuing social experiences, try engaging outside your walls.
Right.
So practicing and experiencing and experimenting with those different ways of being in the world is really good soul work. I would also say the only other thing is a centering prayer is really good soul work. So that's the kind of prayer where I'm not talking to God. He's not talking to me. I'm creating space in solitude and silence. I am ignoring thoughts as they come, and they will. You can't control that. But when they come, I don't give them my focus. I don't give them my energy. I just let them float by. When feelings rise, I don't give them my focus or my energy either. I let them just pass through me. And I keep my concentration on just sitting in the presence of God. Thomas Keating, one of the fathers of modern centering prayer, he calls this the divine psychotherapy. You know, Mother Teresa was asked years ago by Dan Rather, the CBS News anchor, when you pray, what do you ask God for? And she said, I don't ask him for anything. I just listen, you know?
That's good.
And thinking he knew what she meant, he goes, oh, well, what does God say to you? And she said, he just listens back.
Yeah.
Well, that's centering prayer.
Yeah. That's
it's like,
good.
I'm just bringing my agency of mind, my focus, my ability to focus and think about certain things and not think about others. I'm using the full weight of that to just be, there's our operative word for the soul, right? Just to be in God's presence.
Right.
I'm not accomplishing anything. I'm not achieving anything. I'm just with him.
Yeah.
Right? That's good soul work.
That's good. So in the context of the four masculine archetypes, this is the magician or the sage, right?
That's
So
it's magical, it's mystical.
And this is, I think I would diagnose that you resonate really well with this aspect.
I'm dominant magician or dominant soul.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah. And it's taken me a long time to realize that because I'm an activator. I love going and doing things.
Yes.
If I could do a task at home that improves my family's life, listening to an audiobook, I am so happy.
Yes.
Right. It's
Heaven.
like, I love the mind. I love the strength. But both of those are tools for my main driver, which is the magician that wants to see the world as it is and see the world as it could be. And that's both for myself and for my kids and for my family and my community, and then help bring about that future version. And I think I spend more of my mental energy than I can tell living in that space of trying to understand and experience and then bring about like what could this be. And I think that's such a good invitation for the Christian life, is to help bring the kingdom of heaven to earth, right? That's at the center of the Great Commission.
That's a soul conversation.
It's a soul conversation. And we have become so materialistic in our society that it's weird to think about spiritual realities. But I see guys right now having conversations. You know, Russell Brand is now a Christian. Jordan Peterson is, Christian adjacent. I see there's been guys on Joe Rogan talking about Christ in a way that feels really spiritual. And it's like, oh, this is interesting. Our world is waking up to the fact that the material reality that we've all been sold is pretty insufficient for my human experience.
That's right.
And so if this whole idea of soul or magician feels a little woo-woo or foreign, for me, that's kind of the easiest selling point, is like, has your life experience given you sufficient confidence that a material understanding of the world is sufficient for your humanity? And if not, if you think that there's something else beneath the surface, then lean into that, because there is. And there's so much amazing gold and wealth of experience there for you.
That's right. That's right. And if you think it's woo-woo, it's more likely that your soul is going to slip into that bipolar shadow state.
Right.
And it's going to express actively as a con artist.
Right.
And that makes a lot of sense if you think about it. If I don't know who I am and what my life's about, I'll settle for getting the sale.
Right.
Like, what do I got to do, and what do I got to say, and who do I need to become to get you to see what I want you to see, believe what I want you to believe, and do what I want you to do.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who even have achieved their success. They've built the empire, not from a deep connection of who they are and what their life's about, but because they're the active, immature soul. They're the con artist.
Right.
Or passively, they become the faux naive.
Yeah. The innocent.
The innocent dummy.
Yeah.
And that's a commitment to denial.
Right.
And denial is a 3-step process, see, feel, deal. I'm not going to see what I see. So I don't have to feel what I'm going to feel about it. So I don't have to deal with it.
Right.
There's the faux naive, the
Right.
passive, detached soul.
Yeah.
So we got to do this stuff. We've got to practice the presence of just being. And in doing so, God draws us out.
Yeah. And understanding that the world that you're in now has a spiritual component to it, and it's not fixed. We're meant to be active participants in cultivating and stewarding this thing that we have called life and reality in the world.
Yeah.
And our invitation is to take stock of what is here
Mm-hmm.
and imagine what could be, and then get to work
Yeah.
and have fun with it.
Yes.
Experiment,
Yes.
but do it in a way that is cultivating goodness and truth and beauty,
yes.
not at the expense of other people,
Mm-hmm.
but bringing other people into that flourishing.
Yeah. It's good.
So we got one left.
Yeah. The heart's the last one.
Yeah.
And it's the last one in our conversation, but it's probably also the last one in terms of prioritization in the culture that we're living in. This tends to be the one that's the most neglected, the most deprioritized.
Is that contingent upon demographics? Or are you saying across the board we're not, like, is that for men or is that across the board?
Women are probably a little better at it than men, but I would not say it's extreme. I see a lot of women also with detached or buried or lopped off hearts. And it may express differently too with both men and women. Like sometimes people tell me, I don't need your groups, man. Like I'm an open book, you know, or my heart's on my sleeve, or I'm feeling, I just tell you, you know, and I'm going, you probably need this group more than anybody.
Yeah,
you should not be an open book, you know, or like there's a huge difference between having feelings, which is what a mature heart does. I'm willing to have my feelings. I'm willing to name them, explore them, decide what to do with them. That's mature heart work, right? Big difference between that, having feelings, and your feelings having you, which is what a lot of these people who say, I'm an open book, I say what I think, I like, you know, it's going, your feelings.
I'm all emotion all the time. It's
Yeah.
just spilling out everywhere. I've got no control over it.
That's chaos,
Yeah.
right? And it's damaging,
Yeah.
right? And it's not fun to be around.
It's not fun to be either.
That's right. It's suffering.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's suffering. So feelings don't get to drive. I'm driving, right? But they're important navigators. So the heart.
But that's also half of the people. The other half of the people are like the kind of David Goggins stoic, like hyper masculine, like
That's right.
like I've cut off my emotions.
That's right.
I don't even experience them. I'm not in touch with them.
Yeah.
I have a buddy who has his screen on his phone, his lock screen is like the emotion wheel, because he has no idea how to understand what he's feeling.
Yeah.
And so he'll get his phone out and he'll look at it and he'll be like, oh, I'm feeling this way. He has no idea what he's feeling. He's like trying to learn it now.
I love
30s.
that practice.
Yeah.
That's commendable.
Yeah.
I love it. I'd love to
But it just speaks to how little we've cultivated understanding a healthy relationship with our heart.
Yeah. And if you hear Goggins' story, you'd go, well, of course you have.
Right.
Of course you've lopped off feelings. Of course you ignore them. That makes a lot of sense. You're not crazy,
Right.
David.
Right.
You know? Makes a lot of sense why you do what you do. And that would be true of all of us.
Sure.
Right. If we're suppressing our heart, suppressing our feelings, opting for logic or reason over them, or they've just taken over and we just unfiltered, we just let them all hang out and we're reacting to things and all that kind of stuff. Whatever is going on with that heart would make a lot of sense if we could just hear people's stories.
Yeah.
But by and large, from a cultural place, we were all taught a long time ago this thing that, again, definitively the heart is feelings, needs, and connections. Okay? They're all related. Feelings are significant because they're signposts that want to show me what my heart needs.
Right.
So my heart's needs are attached to the feelings that are true inside of me, right? Well, if I'm suppressing or ignoring my feelings, I'm going to have no idea what I need.
Right.
And the danger of that is my heart will get its needs met with or without me.
Correct.
And if it does it without me, it's going to torpedo my life in the process. And this is the reason why Pew Research Group did this study that they said only 3 out of 10 leaders finish well. Like only 3 out of 10 leaders are going to reach the end of their tenure and the end of their life without having had an affair, without having embezzled money, without having abused their power, without having burned out or flamed out. You know,
Yeah.
3 out of 10, right? And I think that's an indictment on how inept we are when it comes to this heart part of us. I have
Right.
no idea what I'm feeling. I try to turn those off with different coping mechanisms like workaholism or alcohol or scrolling my phone or, whatever it happens to be. And what we have to understand is you matter.
Right.
Like what you feel matters because what you need matters. And mature heart work is going to involve doing what your friend's doing. Can I take on here's a color wheel or that's just the science of affect labeling, right? There's a million of those frameworks out there, but can I acquire something that allows me to begin to put a name to these physical sensations that are uncomfortable
Right.
going on in my body? And if I can name them, I can explore them. Well, I think this is fear, or I think it's hurt, or I think I'm lonely, or I feel sad or angry, or whatever it is. If I can name them, well, now I can explore it. Well, what's that hurt about? Or where's that loneliness coming from? Or what's this sadness connected to?
Yeah.
Now I can decide, well, what do I need?
Right.
Like my heart is reaching for me with this sadness or this hurt. Well, what do I need? And guess what? Heart maturity is now I can take personal responsibility to ensure my needs are going to get met in a healthy way.
That brings us back kind of full circle to where we started. How do we navigate that dichotomy of you want to be sacrificial and not holding on to your own,
Yes.
but you also want to be going after it? And it's like that question that I asked you at the beginning about the sadist versus the masochist. Like,
Yes.
How do you hold that in balance? And this is where all 4 of the systems being integrated is so important.
Yeah.
Because checking in on yourself and how you're feeling is kind of key to that question, right?
Yes.
It's like, if I am in a place where someone is taking advantage of me and I'm fine, I'm like, it sucks to be them, they're having to like claw and scratch for that little bit of status or recognition.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't care.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Like I can flex a little bit there.
Yeah.
But if that's really affecting me,
Yeah.
then maybe don't let that happen.
Yeah.
Right. Like if that's going to do some damage,
Yeah.
then maybe don't, this is where you think of Christ's story constantly going out to the wilderness and turning down crowds.
Yes.
And going and seeking his own self. Like he didn't always give. He
That's
didn't
right.
always sacrifice.
That's
he,
right.
He structured his life in such a way that he was taking care of himself
Yes.
so that he could show up when he needed to.
That's right. It's the difference between responsibility, one word, and response ability,
Right.
2 words. I'm able to respond. Mature
That's good.
hearts, when they're connected and they're healthy, are willing to take responsibility for what they feel and what they need, and not hang that responsibility onto everybody else. Well, it's going to be my wife's job to be responsible for what I feel and what I need. It's going to be my boss's job. So in other words, I make my well-being everybody else's role or responsibility. And if you choose not to see me or acknowledge me or take care of me, that results in all kinds of relational disruption, frustration, those types of things. But here's how provocatively I'll say this. My wife's feelings and needs are not my responsibility.
Right.
She is a grown woman. She is responsible for what she feels and what she needs. Now, it's a little more palatable if I flip it.
Right.
My feelings and needs
Are not her responsibility.
are not my wife's responsibility. They are mine.
Right.
I am a grown man, and it's my job to know what's going on inside of me, to name what I need. Now, the irony is, while all the feelings and needs that are going on inside of me are my responsibility, mine alone, there's not a single need I have that I can meet on my own.
Sure.
which means I need to ask.
Yeah.
That's what relationship is. I've got to come to you and I've got to say, hey, I'm feeling this. I have this need. Can you help me meet this need? Okay.
Right.
That's the difference between responsibility and responsibility. I'm not responsible for what you feel and what you need, but that is not a call to indifference.
Right.
I don't care about what you feel or what you need.
Figure
okay?
your crap out.
Yeah. Do this is your deal. Do it on your own. Come back,
Yeah.
No, I care about it and I am able to respond, which means you can ask me. Now, when you ask, I got to be willing to say no, because I remain not responsible for what you feel and need. If I always say no, we don't have a relationship.
Right.
But if I can't say no, my yes doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Right. And so healthy relationships consist of two people willing to be personally responsible for what they feel and what they need, willing to show up and ask the other for help in getting their needs met, with a willingness to both hear and to say no.
Yeah.
And I also say yes a lot, and to always care.
Yeah. And you didn't say anything about seeing the other person and anticipating an offering. How do you feel about that? Because asking is great.
Yeah.
But there's some people in the therapy world that would say, like, wait till you're asked, don't offer help. It's
For
like,
sure.
You see somebody that's struggling and you love them and you want to, if there's something that you can do or say, my wife constantly goes, hey, if you see me having a hard time, if you just came up and like gave me a hug, that would really help.
Yeah.
Right. And that's great. Like, she's asking kind of in advance of that.
Yep.
But now that I kind of know that that's something that's beneficial, if I were to just say, hey, your emotional regulation is your responsibility, good luck.
Yeah.
That's not, I'm not doing doing what I can within my power in a beneficial way to kind of come alongside her and support when she needs it.
Yeah. I think those therapists are probably referring more to just on your own, making some observations. Oh, they're sad or they need something, deciding what they need for them and then doing it. Maybe they didn't want a hug.
Right.
Maybe they didn't want you to come over and bring them a meal, And so dignifying the person while caring.
Sure.
So the Christian psychiatrist Kurt Thompson says curiosity is loving. Right?
It's good.
So when I see it, I can be curious with them. It's like, hey, you seem down. Help them explore that. Like, what's going on for you? And just a willingness to be in it with them. What do you need with me?
Yeah.
Can I give you a hug?
Right.
I asked them. They might say, no, I don't want a hug, but you can make me some chicken noodle soup, or I would love a hug, but that curiosity is actually what's loving, without assuming I think I know what they need or I know what's going on inside of them. I don't know. When somebody's with me in a group and they're crying, I never assume they're sad tears.
Right.
Like, I don't know what those tears are connected to. They're tears. They might be angry tears.
Sure.
They might be hurt tears. They might be lonely tears. Like, I don't know what they are. So I have to ask, like, hey, what are your tears about? Is a question that I might ask.
So love has a lot to do with emotions, and that's kind of what we've been discussing, or the heart rather. And it also has to do with just appreciating and experiencing the goodness, right? Yeah. It's like this beautiful world that we have. Mm-hmm. Right. There's this whole kind of aesthetic movement that misses out on so much of the beauty and goodness. And something that's the kind of background that I grew up in. Mm-hmm. Wearing black suits to church and, eating bland food, and it's kind of tied to a unhealthy view of money and experience and drinking and experiencing goodness. Right. It's like, when you look at the criticisms that Christ's opponents had for him, they called him a glutton and a drunkard. Mm-hmm. It's like he was drinking deeply of the goodness. Friend
of prostitutes.
Yeah, he was drinking deeply of the goodness of this life, right? And I think that that's such a key part of emotional and personal and spiritual health is being able to be grateful and to experience in deep joy and gratitude the goodness that God has for us.
Yeah. Happiness comes from presence.
Yeah.
And presence, like me actually being fully where my feet are, right? Presence comes by giving my focus and my attention over fully to my senses. What do I feel on my skin? What do I smell? What do I taste?
Yeah.
What do I see? And when I'm able to fully open myself to this present moment through my senses, that's where deep happiness comes from. So even this holiday season, rather than like we got to plan the party, we got to prepare the meals, we got to buy the gifts, we got to, plan the trip, we got to, we get so caught up in the operational procedure of the holidays that no wonder we get to January and we go, where did Christmas go? Or whatever it is. Like I missed it, right? I powered through it. If we can learn to slow down and do presence work through the senses, like even as we prepare the meal, like make that essential experience, smelling it, watching the sprinkles fall on the cookies, tasting it and savoring it and smelling the cider on the stove and sitting and seeing who you're with and opening yourself and being aware to what you're feeling in your heart as you're going through these moments, even if it's like, yeah, there's gladness here, but also there's sadness, and also it's a little lonely, and also like there is a richness of life, a zest for life that comes from all of that, and it ultimately results in your happiness.
That's so good. So that I feel like your nod to the holiday season that's approaching, maybe a good way to wrap this up is a statement or some ideas about the importance of integrating all four of those systems in a healthy way, because you could go through the holiday system just on strength, right? And miss it all.
That's right.
You could go through it only on mind, and then you're kind of, you're out there thinking about all the stuff that you have to do, and you're not doing all this stuff, and you're not experiencing the goodness.
Yeah.
So what does it look like to have all four of those systems integrated in a healthy way?
Yeah. Well, I'm not a balance guy.
Right.
A lot of times I talk about this and people think, oh, all things being equal or something. 25% heart, 25% mind. Like, I'm a harmony guy. Okay. The four critical parts of us need to be harmonized. And that might mean that one's out front carrying the melody line, depending on what the situation requires. Right. And the other parts don't walk off the stage. They stay in the background. They stay informing the way I'm relating or the way I'm leading or living at any given moment. But maybe they're a little softer. Maybe they're singing a harmony part, And then at some point, that one that's been out front carrying the melody line slips to the side, and another one takes center stage, right? So if you've ever heard the phrase, you brought a knife to a gunfight, for example. There's so many times in my life where I've brought a mind to a heart conversation.
Sure. Such a guy thing to do.
Yeah. Or I bring a mind to a soul conversation. This is not a tactical meeting. This is a dreaming session or something, And so,
oh my gosh, you're trying to be logical and I'm trying to dream. Get out of here, man.
That's right.
Like, let's dream.
That didn't work.
We'll figure it out after we get a dream. Then we can apply the logic.
So learning to discern, like I have all of these parts, right? Now, some of them feel like a 3-iron or something in the bag. It's like, I'd rather hit my 5, It's like I'm just so much more comfortable and confident. So I end up pulling that one out of the bag more often, when really I've got a club that's designed for this shot. I'm just not is good with it or something. It might feel like if you start to, kind of pull the heart out of the bag as you discern this is what's actually needed in this moment or in this conversation, it's going to feel a little uncomfortable. It's going to feel a little wonky and awkward, but you got to start hitting that club if you're going to, get good at it. And so learning to discern which part needs to kind of take center stage in this moment, in this conversation with my son or around the dinner table or, the family all going, to Top Golf or the museum, that might require something different, whatever it is that you're engaging in around the holidays, learning to discern, well, which part needs to take center stage, be sure the others don't leave the stage completely, and just practice operating within the ones that feel a little less intuitive.
That's good. And I want to bring it back. We'll end on this, bringing it back full circle to the Shema, right? Which is starts with hearing, and then it goes to loving God, and then it goes to loving others
and
right?
self.
Yeah.
Love your neighbor as yourself. That's critical, because whatever I do to me, I'm going to do to you.
Right.
With the heart, for example, if I'm, telling myself to power through, suck it up, if I'm throwing Bible verses over my feelings and kind of dismissing them with spirituality, saying, if I'm doing that to myself, I'm going to do that to you. I'm going to tell you to suck it up. I'm going to tell you to be reasonable. I'm going to tell you to power through. But if I'm being curious and naming what's true inside of me and caring about my needs and exploring them, I'll do that for you.
Right.
Right. So 4 parts expressed within the context of 3 relationships: God, others, and self.
Yeah. Which is so good. And I think that is the romance of Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is this adventure to explore and to be and to become, but it all has to start with that romance with God, because you can have a wealth of experiences trying to love yourself and love people well, but if your source for all of that isn't from God,
Mm-hmm.
then you're just essentially you're not bumping into other ships, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're trying to take care of yourself, but that overarching direction of where you're going is missing. And the metaphor kind of breaks down there, but the fuel that you run on is going to go out, right? And so if you can kind of get that relationship with God, the love, the mind, the heart, the mind, the soul, and the strength oriented in its proper direction,
Mm-hmm.
and feeding off of its proper source,
Mm-hmm.
then that can fuel you for the other two that are our experience in this world. So yeah,
It's good. Thanks, Ian.
this has been great. Thanks for coming on. I feel like
Yeah.
we're going to do this again.
I hope so. That'd be great.
Cool. All right.
It's wonderful. Can't lose. You hear that music?